Imagine waking up every day knowing that everything, from the food you eat to the air you breathe, could be your last. That was the reality for people in ancient China. One of the most advanced yet perilous civilizations in history. We're not talking about legendary kung fu masters or peaceful temples here. No, today we're diving into the gritty, dangerous, and often downright terrifying world that would make modern life look like paradise. So buckle up, because by the end of this video, you'll be more grateful for your Wi-Fi and grocery delivery than ever before. Let's break down why surviving in ancient China was like playing the world's toughest game of survival. And trust me, most of us wouldn't have made it past level 1. Let's set the stage. Ancient China was home to incredible innovations: paper, gunpowder, noodles, all the essentials that helped shape the world as we know it. But what people don't tell you is that living there was like playing a real-life video game on nightmare mode, where your daily objective was just not dying. That's right, folks. Living in ancient China was about as dangerous as trying to navigate a modern-day highway during rush hour, except instead of traffic jams, you were dodging disease, famine, and warfare. Good times. Let's start with the most important part of survival: food. Now imagine you're living in the Zhou dynasty around 1000 BC, and you're feeling pretty hungry. You saunter over to the local market and, oh wait, no cheeseburgers, no fries, no deep-fried anything. Instead, you're lucky if you get a bowl of rice, maybe some millet, and if the gods are smiling on you, maybe a tiny fish. But there's a catch. If you're a peasant, and let's face it, 90% of you watching this would have been, you're not getting the good rice. That's reserved for the aristocrats. You're getting coarse rice, which is about as delicious as chewing on gravel. And during famines, which happened regularly, you might be stuck eating tree bark or locusts. Yum. Now that you've managed to get your hands on some food, let's talk hygiene. Yes, basic sanitation, or rather, the lack of it. This was ancient China, folks, long before the days of refrigeration or running water. Your food was probably stored in less than ideal conditions, and spoiled food. Oh, that was just part of the deal. Food poisoning was about as common as a cold, and if the hunger didn't get you, the food might. Remember, this was a time before modern medicine or even the concept of germs. People had no idea that the food they were eating was making them sick, and there certainly weren't any refrigerators or freezers to keep things fresh. As a result, intestinal diseases ran rampant, and people were constantly battling stomach issues. So, the next time you complain about your stomach after eating a questionable burrito, just remember, at least you're not living off rotten fish in ancient China. Now, let's say you've managed to find some food. Congrats! You're still alive. But then, disaster strikes. You catch a cold. No big deal, right? Just pop some cold medicine and rest up. Ha! If only. In ancient China, there were no antibiotics, no painkillers, and not even a box of tissues in sight. Medicine back then was a mix of herbal remedies, acupuncture, and the occasional terrifying surgery without anesthesia. Sure, Chinese medicine made some amazing advances, like using herbs and acupuncture. But if you had a serious infection, well, you were more likely to get a scroll written about your tragic demise than a cure. And let's not forget smallpox, typhoid, or the plague. Basically, if you weren't dodging invading armies or corrupt officials, you were dodging death every time you sneezed. All right, let's say you're healthy and well-fed. Great. But here's the fun part: the government. Living under imperial rule meant the emperor was basically a god, and you were a speck of dust. If the emperor woke up on the wrong side of the bed, you could lose your land, your job, or, well, your head. And speaking of jobs, unless you were part of the elite, your daily life probably involved backbreaking labor. Most of you would have been peasants or farmers, toiling away in rice paddies from dawn until dusk. Think of it as Farmville, but without the internet, or fun. Now, if taxes and hunger didn't finish you off, constant warfare might. Ancient China saw more battles than your average Call of Duty player. Entire kingdoms were wiped out, and armies regularly marched through the countryside, burning villages, stealing food, and just causing general chaos. And guess what? If you were a guy between 16 and 60, you were eligible to be conscripted into the army. We're talking swords, spears, arrows, basically fighting in the world's longest LARP event, except everyone's actually trying to kill you. Ladies, don't think you're off the hook. In ancient China, your life would have been just as difficult, if not more. You were probably married off by the age of 15 to a guy your family picked for you. And congratulations! You're now a full-time housekeeper, farm worker, and child bearer. Confucian teachings meant that a woman's duty was to serve her husband and bear sons, because in a society built on male heirs, daughters, not so useful. If you didn't produce a boy, things could get dicey. And if your husband decided you weren't doing a great job, well, divorce wasn't really an option. Let's just say life as a woman wasn't exactly a cakewalk. But let's not forget that despite all the chaos, ancient China gave us some incredible cultural achievements. Philosophers like Confucius and Laozi laid down ethical teachings that still influence the world today. They invented paper, which revolutionized communication, and gunpowder, which, well, we all know how that changed things. Artists perfected calligraphy, poetry, and scroll painting, leaving behind a rich cultural legacy. At the end of the day, life in ancient China was harsh, unpredictable, and tough. Sure, they had stunning art, philosophy, and innovations, but just surviving? That was a full-time job. Next time you're stuck in traffic or complaining about your Wi-Fi being slow, remember, it could be worse. You could be hand-picking rice in a muddy field, dodging tax collectors, and praying you don't catch a fatal disease from yesterday's sketchy fish stew. Now, unless you're reincarnating as a duke or, better yet, the emperor, the odds weren't in your favor. But let's not romanticize the emperor's life too much either. Sure, they had palaces and power, but with great power came great paranoia. Assassination attempts, betrayals, and poisonings were daily threats. Every meal had to be tasted by servants because who knew if today's dumpling was spiked with poison? So really, no matter your status, whether you were a peasant or the guy on the throne, ancient China was a high-stakes game of survival. Look, I know we all fantasize about living in the past, but let's be real. If you time traveled to ancient China, you'd be toast faster than you could say Confucius says. The reality is, unless you're equipped with some serious survival skills, you'd be crying for your air-conditioned apartment by day 2. Ancient China may have given us some of the most incredible cultural achievements, calligraphy, philosophy, and inventions, but it was also a place where every day was a battle to stay alive. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this dive into why history was a giant survival challenge, hit that like button, subscribe to Genius History, and let me know in the comments what other time periods you think you wouldn't survive in. Spoiler alert, it's probably all of them. Stay curious, stay alive, especially in the present, and I'll see you in the next one.